Hello, CH is True here. Today I'm going to discuss the subject of artificial intelligence more from a philosophy standpoint than anything else. It's not, I have no particular expertise in the subject. I haven't done any research in it. I haven't read the latest literature about it except in the popular press, where it seems like more and more there are these grandiose announcements about computers that can do all of these, I almost want to say marvelous things, but they're, frankly, from my standpoint, a little bit fearful. So wondrous, but maybe in the classical sense of fear-inspiring. Okay. Um, there have been skeptics about the possibility of AI. In fact, the mathematician mathematician Roger Penrose definitely is a skeptic. He approaches it from the standpoint of Gödel's incompleteness and how a formal system can never contain all knowable axioms, which is interesting. Okay, because let's say I were to come up with the idea of a proof that there are an infinite number of prime numbers, okay, that prime numbers go on to infinity. This has been proven a million times before. The Greeks proved it a certain way. And I'm sure what I'm about to say has been come across before. In fact, I'm going to link to, I came up with this while listening to a lecture on prime numbers from the MAA website, and I'm going to go ahead and link to it. I was cooking eggs at the time, so I don't know that this is necessarily what I heard, but I think this is more or less a kind of simplified version of the proof I heard, or at least it's inspired by it. And that is, if I pick two numbers that are relatively prime to one another, they don't have to be primes, but that they're relatively prime to one another, and let's say I multiply those two numbers together and add 1, okay, I will get three numbers relatively prime to one another. Okay. Then I multiply all three numbers by, and a computer could do this, by the way. A computer could easily follow this algorithm. I multiply all three numbers together, I get a fourth number, then I add 1 to that, and I'll get 4 relatively prime numbers. And I can keep going on forever and ever and ever and get relatively prime numbers. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be primes, but they will either be primes or they'll be composite. If they're primes, I've discovered a prime number. If they're composites, I have a bunch of prime numbers that are not going to be found in any of the other numbers. So I have proven that there are an infinite number of prime numbers just by following a recursion. Okay, either one way or the other. Now, this is what's important about this is an intuitive proof. It is something that a computer could possibly follow, but would a computer get it, quote unquote? You understand what I'm saying? In other words, at what point will the computer say, aha, yes, there are an infinite number of prime numbers versus following the algorithm? Okay. Well, proponents of AI, and I know there are strong and weak proponents of AI, and so I'm not going to get into that so much, but proponents of AI say that they believe that a computer would be able to figure something like that out, would be able to manifest the same intelligence that a human brain could at a certain point in time. Obviously not 20 years in the future, or even 100 years in the future, but they would say that that's possible. Dr. Penrose, by contrast, would say no, that there's something about the human brain that is fundamentally different than the computer. Now, he seems to go into quantum physics and comes to some kind of argument. I guess that would beg the question of, what if we had quantum computers? Would those possibly then be able to imitate the human brain? I'm not an expert on Dr. Penrose's argument. I read his book and had enjoyed it, but I can't do justice to his argument. I would suggest you do some research on that yourself. There is a talk on Google Talks where he gave a talk on artificial intelligence, so check it out. I personally am going to remain, let me put it this way, I'm going to address the question less from a scientific or mathematical standpoint, more from a philosophy standpoint. The whole question of AI, transhumanism, transgenics, has a very interesting cross-political spectrum unification here. Among opponents of what you might call transhumanism, on the right, you might have Christian author Tom Horn, okay, who definitely believes that it offends the sovereignty of God. On the left end, you might have anarcho-primitivists, or people like John Zerzan or deep ecologists. Both of them say no. It's not even a matter of whether AI can exist or not. It's just any talk about it is, well, on the one hand, demeaning to the sovereignty of God, but then on the other hand, would demean the value of life. Now, I would say, as far as Tom Horn is concerned, that the question I would ask him would be, God, for a theist, God is infinite, and therefore beyond even the mathematical infinities that Cantor describes. So would the fact that you could create sentient life offend the sovereignty of God any more than the fact that a man and woman combine and create new life? That'd be, you don't worship your mother and father even though they gave birth to you. So would man become quote-unquote God by virtue of creating some other form of intelligence? Would one necessarily follow? I'm not saying that it isn't true. I'm not saying one way or the other. But I mean, for a theist, hypothetically, for most theists, God, or at least monotheists, and God would be behind everything. And so that'd be the question that I would ask him, not necessarily to make light of his concerns, though. I think that Tom Horn, whether you agree with his theologies or not, he did raise valuable and valid critiques of the transhumanism enterprise. Now, I would say, though, that from, let's say, from the left, the kind of deep ecology standpoint, that's a whole lot more possible. In other words, if we presume the theistic argument, God is infinite, you cannot dethrone an infinite God beyond all mathematical infinities. But the argument from the liberal left opponents of transhumanism or transgenics or AI would be that we would demean the value of ecology. We would demean the kind of, we would create a hierarchical concept of life, where if one life form creates another life form, then in a sense you've created a hierarchy and reinforced patriarchy and capitalism and all these things. That's a harder argument to refute. I think, to be honest with you, in some sense, it isn't so much that you would dethrone God, because for a theist that would be impossible, but you could dethrone the value of life. If AI were successful, you might imbue humankind with a hubris even beyond what we have now. And that would be pretty bad. And so that would be but I think, to be honest with you, I think both John Zerzan and Tom Horn raise valid concerns, and which, the two would never get together to do anything because they would oppose each other, but they both, in a sense, raise valid concerns. And then on the pro-AI side, you have both maybe you also have a kind of right-left combination. You have people on the right and people maybe on the traditional Marxian left who are very much in favor of industrial progress and all the kind of memes involved with quote unquote progress. And the thing that I would say is that maybe supporters of AI and sort of very pro-tech people, and maybe people on the other end who are skeptical, need to sit down and have a dialogue and realize that each makes a valid point. The pro technology and science side, definitely, what's this channel about? It's about science, math, the exploration of ideas. We can never go back again. I don't think we can ever do as John Zerzan suggests and go back to a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. I just don't think we could. Maybe we could, but I don't think that it's possible. But then and I think that there are valuable and good things that come from technology. But then I think that John Zerzan, and yes, Tom Horn also, make valid points too, that if you vest humankind with a hubris, we will think that we can dethrone the absolute. We will think that we can dethrone the infinity of infinities. But also, we might actually succeed in dethroning a concept within ourselves of the value of life. So, is AI possible? I don't know. But I think that, as with any scientific exploration, there needs to be an ethical dimension to the exploration. We can't just have all mind and no heart. We need to have a combination of these. And history has shown that intellect detached from compassion is very dangerous indeed. Thank you.